At Sierra, discover top workout gear at incredible prices, which might lead to another discovery. Your headphones haven't been connected this whole time. Awkward. Discover top brands at unexpectedly low prices. Sierra, let's get moving.
So the more we're talking about what worry does, the more we're talking about how worry shows up and asks questions, the more we're using that language with kids, the more we're teaching them that bigger skill. The skill of handling the pattern, the skill of handling Henry the worry, rather than the skill of trying to create certainty, because the questions are limitless and they change as you get older.
Welcome to Season 7 of Flusterclux with Lynn Lyons, where we'll talk about managing anxiety and all the other emotions too. We tackle the serious stuff without being too serious. I'm your co-host, Robin. I'm Lynn's sister-in-law, and I'm here to ask your questions.
And I'm Lynn Lyons. I'm an anxiety expert, speaker, mom, and author. I've been a therapist for 35 years. Parenting can be a flusterclux, and I'm here to help you find your way. I'll tell you what to do and what to say.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Ed.
Hello.
So, everybody, this is Ed. This is my brother, and he is my podcast partner for the time being. And as most of you who have listened before, if this is the first episode you're ever listening to, then you're like, oh, it's Lynn and Ed. It's usually Lynn and Robin, but Ed is stepping in. He's been editing and producing the podcast in the background for, what do you think, Ed? Like most of it, right?
Yeah, since 2021.
Yeah.
And Robin is my wife, and she is taking a brief sabbatical because she's working on a new business opportunity that is taking more than every moment she has. So I'm going to step in. I'm like the substitute teacher.
Yeah, but you're the substitute teacher that I know very well.
Yes. Once our mother was my substitute teacher in second grade.
Oh, she was?
Yes.
How did that go?
It went fine. At one point, she patted me on the head, and that made me a little uncomfortable.
So our mom was an elementary school teacher when we were growing up.
And Miss Hughes was sick.
Oh.
And Mom got the call.
Yeah? Didn't you have like a total crush on Miss Hughes?
I did have a crush on Miss Hughes.
Yeah.
And she got married and became Mrs. Granado mid-year.
Yeah.
And all 18 of her second grade students attended the wedding.
Oh, that's so sweet. Were you jealous? Do you remember thinking like, who's that guy?
Yeah. I did get a kiss on the cheek, though. I was happy about that.
Well, I am delighted that you were willing to do this because you know how it goes. You've been in the background, and Robin is amazing at creating new things. As we've talked about, she was the one who in March of 2020, remember March of 2020? She was like, hey, you know how we've been talking about maybe doing a podcast? Let's do it. And then she just made it happen. So
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I have every confidence in her ability to take this next step. Welcome. So glad to have you.
Thank you.
You're my younger brother.
That's right.
Yeah.
By 4 years.
Yeah. So when you were in second grade, I was in sixth grade. Probably starting to get bullied by then, but I don't know.
Oh.
Yeah, that's a whole other.
You don't have to bring the mood down.
I know that's a whole other story. You were getting kisses on the cheek, and
That's
I
right.
was hiding in the bathroom from Deneen Piscatano. But you're right. Let's not go there. And also, if people have listened to the fainting episode, I'm sure you came up in that one because you're a fainter too.
It's been a while, but yes, it's happened.
Yeah, I've had a more recent faint than you've had because I went down when my son got his tonsils out. But we'll save this. We'll perhaps use this for filler in another episode. But your fainting stories, you could tell me your fainting stories every single day for the rest of my life, and I would laugh because you just are so good at telling them. But we'll do that as a tease for the future. Yeah.
Sounds good.
All right.
I'm happy to oblige.
Okay. Thank you, sir. So we did a few weeks ago, we did 2 episodes with Ryan Wexelblatt. And even last week, in our last episode, I talked a little bit about those episodes. He's the ADHD expert who just gave such great information. But some people in the podcast group and I got a few emails where they were still saying like, can you talk about those social anxiety skills? Like, we need to hear more about that. So we have a listener question, but I just want to give a little summary again of the social anxiety skills and a little bit of that differentiation that I love to do. In context, Ryan was talking about the social anxiety groups that he does with boys who have ADHD. And he was really talking a lot about the skills that he teaches kids with ADHD. He talked about reading the field, which was, as you're going into a situation, being able to look out and sort of figure out what to say and what not to say. And we call it reading the room. He calls it reading the field. Perspective taking, where you're really pausing and kind of assessing, should I say that joke? Maybe somebody wouldn't think that that was funny. So sort of going into a situation. The thing about ADHD and anxiety is ADHD is referred to as an externalizing disorder because you're kind of out of your head. And oftentimes when we're talking about the skills we want kids to learn with ADHD, it's to sort of go inside and have some reflection, have some perspective taking, thinking about things. With social anxiety, you are inside. You are way in your head. And so you're not really thinking about, gosh, how do I make sure that I don't come on too strong? Instead, you're in your head thinking, how am I going to talk to people? What if they judge me? I don't know what to say. This is going to go terribly. So when we're talking about the social anxiety skills, people want me to give like a list of skills. And oftentimes I talk about the mistake of getting caught up in tools and techniques. Like when you're anxious, you should hold an ice cube, or you should do progressive muscle relaxation, or you should count back from 10 to 1. Those are all techniques. And people want me to give lists of those techniques. With social anxiety, here's the main skill. It's the ability to tolerate judgment. It's the ability to step into a situation and take some social risk, not really knowing exactly how it's going to go or exactly what people are going to think. So when we're teaching social skills, which our parents taught us, you look somebody in the eye, you have a firm handshake, you say, how are you? Do you remember what we had to say when we answered the phone?
The benefit of being the third was some of those kind of just faded away out of exhaustion by the time I came around.
So you just got to say hello?
Yes.
Okay. Well, mom and dad taught us, our sister and me, how to have those social skills on the phone. When we're talking about social anxiety, the skill, the big skill is to feel uncomfortable and then stay connected externally. Because when people are socially anxious, they retreat into their head. With ADHD, we want you to stay connected, but we want you to pay attention and to have some insight or have some reflection. Social anxiety, I don't want you in your head. And the problem is that sometimes when kids are socially anxious or when teenagers are socially anxious, we think that they need social skills. And this was the point that Ryan was making. Socially anxious kids oftentimes have lovely social skills. They just get too nervous to use them. And so they say nothing. So I love a metaphor. This is what I was thinking about. Apparently, and you're a musician, so Barbra Streisand had horrible stage fright. And Carly Simon did too.
Yes, very bad.
Yeah. So if you think that with somebody who's anxious about doing something, if we say, okay, so a socially anxious kid needs social skills, that's like saying, well, in order to help Barbra Streisand or Carly Simon with their stage fright, we need to have them work on their singing. That wasn't the problem. They had the singing. When they were by themselves, I guess like when they were in the studio or something, they were fine. What we want to focus on is how are you on the stage and able to use the skills that you have, knowing that it's somewhat vulnerable, knowing that people were going to judge you, knowing that you could sing a lyric wrong, knowing that you could mess up in some way. That's the only skill we're focusing on, is the ability to step in and tolerate the discomfort. Now, of course, when you're socially anxious, Remember that the brain will get the message that you're in danger. And so your heart might start to pound or your throat might close up, which probably made it even more difficult for Carly Simon to sing or for Barbra Streisand to sing. But the skill is the ability to do what you need to do, even when you don't know exactly what other people are thinking. And that's what I work on over and over and over and over again with socially anxious teenagers. So the exposure therapy is you're just going to keep stepping into this situation and you're going to take risk. Now, maybe I'll say, look, you want to have a conversation, so let's practice having a conversation. It's not that they don't know how to have a conversation. It's that they have to have a conversation in the setting where there's potential judgment. So that's the difference.
And allowing themselves a certain amount of grace to make a mistake.
That's right.
And say the wrong thing.
Right. Exactly. We want to normalize all of that because anxiety promotes things to an emergency that are not an emergency.
Mm-hmm.
So, there's Adele, I guess, has a lot of performance anxiety too. And she actually is rather delightful in the way she just kind of confesses it and talks about it on stage. She's just really open with it. I don't know if anybody taught her that, but she's sort of given up on this idea that she's going to have a perfect performance.
Right.
And I think the interesting thing is it just makes her more delightful. I just saw another clip of her the other day. The wind blew up her dress and she said, like, did you all just see my bum? All right, let's take a little break.
Yes.
And when we come back, you're going to read me the listener question and we're going to dive into that.
Did you know that when your metabolism is working properly, you will feel the benefits in literally every aspect of your life? I found a valuable tool that gives me insights to create a healthy metabolism for my body, and it's called Lumen. It's the world's first handheld metabolic coach. It's a device that measures your metabolism through your breath, and on the app, it lets you know if you're burning fat or carbs, and it gives you tailored guidance to improve your nutrition, workouts, sleep, and even stress management. All you have to do is breathe into your Lumen first thing in the morning, and you'll know what's going on with your metabolism, whether you're burning mostly fats or carbs, and then Lumen gives you a personalized nutrition plan for that day based on your measurements. You could even breathe into it before or after workouts and meals so you know exactly what's going on in your body in real time. Metabolism is at the center of everything your body does. Optimal metabolic health translates to a bunch of benefits, including easier weight management, improved energy levels, better fitness results, and critically better sleep. And it can track your cycle as well as the onset of menopause and adjust your recommendations to keep your metabolism healthy through these hormonal shifts so you can keep up your energy and stave off cravings. Take the next step to improving your health. Go to lumen.me/flusterclux to get 20% off your Lumen. That's lumen.me/flusterclux for 20% off your purchase. Thank you, Lumen, for sponsoring this episode.
It's not always easy to find a great mentor who can help you level up. My dream mentor, Martha Stewart. So I was really excited when I heard that she has a class on Masterclass. With Masterclass, you can learn from the best to become your best. Masterclass is the only streaming platform where you can learn and grow with over 200 of the world's best. For just $10 a month, an annual membership with Masterclass gets you unlimited access to every instructor. And you can access Masterclass on your phone, computer, smart TV, or even in audio mode while you're driving. Learn to make new habits with New York Times bestselling author James Clear, or improve your physical and mental well-being with leading gut health experts, or build stronger relationships with renowned psychotherapist Esther Perel. And the classes really make a difference. 88% of the members feel that Masterclass has made a positive impact on their lives. I've been a member of Masterclass now for over 3 years, and I just get so inspired when I scan all of the mentors available to show me how to level up on all of my personal hobbies, from gardening to cooking, interior design, to really making a difference in the most important skills in my life, whether it's business, relationships, or well-being. Every new membership comes with a 30-day money-back guarantee, so don't wait another moment to start your learning journey with Masterclass. Right now, Flusterclux listeners get an additional 15% off any annual membership at masterclass.com/fluster. That's 15% off at masterclass.com/fluster. Masterclass.com/fluster.
I love my cat. I've always had cats. Sometimes I have 4 cats. It's freezing outside. And there's a lot of predators out there. So guess what? My cat is an indoor cat. During the cold months of winter, every cat's an indoor cat. If there's one thing that can really stink up being stuck inside, it's the litter box. I know this for a fact. Don't let that nasty smell ruin your winter wonderland. Switch to Pretty Litter like I did. Pretty Litter's non-clumping formula traps odor and moisture. It's ultra absorbent, it's lightweight, low dust, and one 6-pound bag works for up to a month. Fantastic. Pretty Litter gives me peace of mind. It changes color to indicate early signs of potential illnesses in my little kitty, like urinary tract infections, kidney issues, and more, things we really want to pay attention to with our kitties. Since Pretty Litter ships right to my door, free shipping right to my door, I never run out. I don't have huge kitty litter bags taking up space. I don't have to go out in the cold and lug those huge tubs from a store to my car and into my house. Pretty Litter's Health Monitor gives you peace of mind. So, indoor cats and indoor humans agree, Pretty Litter helps my house smell fresh and clean. Go to prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. That's prettylitter.com/flusterclux to save 20% on your first order and get a free cat toy. prettylitter.com/flusterclux. Terms and conditions apply. See site for details. Okay, we're back.
All right, so here's the listener question, Lynn. My 10-year-old son seems to worry about so many things. He's always jumping into the future and asking questions. Will you pick me up on time? Do you think I'll get the stomach bug? On a windy day last week, he asked if I'd ever heard of a tree falling on someone's house. He says he is just curious, but I can't keep up with all the questions. If I do answer one to his satisfaction, another one follows. He meets with his counselor at school. They practice breathing, and the counselor also has him write down all his questions between meetings so they can go over them together. My son loves their meetings because the counselor answers everything. I am new to the podcast and working on getting up to speed, but there must be more I can do than this. Help.
Yes. So for those of you who aren't new to the podcast, I'm sure that you are kind of going, oh boy, oh boy. The reason I like this question is because this is a very typical scenario that happens. So you've got this little worrier. A tree did fall when I was on vacation once. There was a big storm and a tree fell and smashed my car in my driveway. Do you remember that? Yeah.
I do remember that.
Yeah. I was totally psyched because I hated the car, but I didn't feel like I could get rid of it. And so Mother Nature helped. Yeah. What this mom is asking is, how do I handle all these questions? And it seems like maybe even kind of intuitively, I don't know how far she is into the podcast, but pretty soon she's going to figure out that the counselor asking the boy to write down all his questions so they can go over them is the exact opposite of what I do. Because this means that this little boy is just generating worry after worry after worry, and the counselor has become an accomplice to his anxiety.
And the well will never run dry.
It will never, ever run dry. And then he'll even become habituated. He will become sort of conditioned to think that this is the way you handle your questions, is that you ask a question and then you get the reassurance that you're seeking. What's interesting about this to me too, and it's not unusual, is he just says he's just curious, right? He's just curious. He just wants to know. And there is a difference. And for those of you that are listening that have had a little worrier like this, you begin to hear and know the difference between I'm curious versus I need reassurance. He wants mom to say some version of, you're going to be fine, or that's not going to happen. And it's sort of, the little kid who believes that there's a monster under the bed and wants mom and dad to check under the bed every night, which sort of helps him in the short term. But then, as one little boy said to me, I don't know why they keep telling me there aren't any monsters, but they also keep checking under the bed. What this perpetuates, unfortunately, is this idea that the worry is meaningful and that all these different questions are important in some way and that he can't move forward until he gets an answer to the question, which is exactly what worry wants. It wants certainty. It wants to know all the answers. So the counselor who's teaching him breathing, swell, like everybody can benefit from learning breathing, but it doesn't address the issue, which is this little boy needs to know what worry is. We need to personify it. We need to bring it to life for him. And he needs to know that regardless of what he's worrying about, because this kid probably, I'm not going to diagnose him, but probably if we were going to diagnose him, he has generalized anxiety disorder, which means he's an equal opportunity worrier. And he is just going to, like you said, Ed, the well is never going to run dry.
And when you say personify it and bring it to life, pulling it out, giving it a name in that respect.
Yep, exactly. Externalizing it, calling it Joe, calling it Henry, because we want him to recognize the pattern. And I talk a lot about the difference between content, what you're worried about, the stomach bug, the tree falling on the house, and process, which another way to think about process is pattern. So what's the pattern? When there's anything in the future that he's unsure of or that, could go either way. A lot of the answers to these questions, which he's not going to like, which his worry isn't going to like, is, I don't know, could happen. But rather than saying to him, I don't know, could happen, and you can say that about little things. Jokingly say, if a little kid says, do you think I'm going to get kidnapped? We don't want to say like, I don't know, could happen. Kids do get kidnapped.
It happens.
It does happen, right?
What would CNN report on if people weren't disappearing?
It's true. It happens less than we think, actually.
I know.
Well, also the huge majority of kidnappings that do happen are family members.
Sure, of course.
Yeah. So anyway, for those of you who just got freaked out, we just gave you the reassurance that you were looking for. But if we say, I don't know, could happen, for something that's a little less dramatic. So what if a little kid said, do you think I'll get stung by a bee? We could say, bees do sting. That's how they protect themselves. So you could get stung and it would hurt, but you'd handle it. What we really want to do is we want to talk about the pattern. We want to talk about Henry the worry. We want to talk about the process. We want to say, you know what? That's your worry showing up, isn't it? And your worry is so good at coming up with questions. And it really, really wants me to give you reassurance. It really, really wants me to say, you're not going to get the stomach bug. Or we had somebody come and trim all the trees last year. So if there is a big windstorm, then all the branches that were in danger of falling, we remove those. That's the tendency for people to want to give that information. It's not all or nothing. Like if your child said, are there vampires that are going to come in my room at night and suck my blood? We wouldn't say like, well, could be. You'd say, you know what, here's the deal. There's no such thing as vampires. But also, I bet your worry is going to come up with something else to scare you. And even if I tell you there's no vampires, I bet your worry is still going to say, oh, I don't know. Maybe your mom doesn't know any better. Maybe there are vampires. So the more we're talking about what worry does, the more we're talking about how worry shows up and asks questions, the more worry says, I have to know. The more we're using that language with kids, the more we're teaching them that bigger skill. The skill of handling the pattern, the skill of handling Henry the worry, rather than the skill of trying to create certainty, because the questions are limitless and they change as you get older. Yeah.
We had a friend who somehow got very frightened of the notion of tarantulas.
Oh, really?
So their mom got out Wikipedia. Tarantulas only exist in these climates. It's not warm enough here, blah, blah, blah. He was very relieved. And then he saw the Harry Potter episode with Voldemort's snake, Nagini.
Oh, yeah.
And then he said, well, what about snakes? If she convinced him that there were no boa constrictors in New England, shortly thereafter, he comes up with another one.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And that's how this thing works. It's the yeah, but. So there's no such thing as vampires. Yeah, but. And I've told this story before. There was a girl that I was treating her family, and she was terrified of people coming into the house. They put in a very expensive alarm system. And then I think one of her older brothers was watching like a Ocean's 11 or a James Bond movie or something. And it showed how they were able to usurp the alarm system.
Kill the power.
Yeah. And this $50,000 alarm system that they had put in place now became meaningless because she was like, well, that doesn't give me 100% certainty. The more that you keep playing whack-a-mole, that's such a good example of the tarantula with the snake. You're not teaching the process. It's hard because we want our kids to feel secure. We want them to feel like we have the answers to the questions. We don't want them to worry. But if you've got a worrier like this, if you've got that bottomless pit, you've got to get out of the content. Now, that said, the school counselor, and I hope you guys listening, I hope you audibly groaned when Ed read that part of the question. The school counselor is doing his or her best in order to help this kid, but collecting all of his questions so that then he can come in and have them all answered. We might as well say to the school counselor, you know what, we're going to start giving you kickbacks from anxiety disorders because you're being so helpful in creating this. And this happens a lot. It happens in more subtle ways because a lot of times therapists or counselors at school will say, well, let's keep track of your worries and let's write them down so then we can talk about them. Cognitive behavioral therapy, very often they'll say, well, what's the evidence to support that worry? And that just keeps us in the content, just like your friend looking up in Wikipedia. Well, what's the evidence to support tarantulas? Well, there wasn't any. Okay, fine. I'll just move on to something else. And I would bet that this little guy, he knows, say he's meeting with his counselor on Wednesday afternoon. He's probably being very diligent about making sure that he remembers all his questions, that he keeps track of them. He might even be, it's as if he turns to his Henry, the worry, and says, Henry, let's make sure we've got this opportunity. We've got a half an hour with Mr. Jenkins. Let's make sure that we really get as many questions as we can. All of that is just continuing to perpetuate this cycle of him needing answers to questions that oftentimes the answer is, I don't know. If you are a parent and you've got one of these worriers, you don't want to get into the habit of saying, well, let's collect all your worries. Like, very often parents will say, well, at bedtime, you can just go over all your worries with me. You can just ask all the questions. We've got all our ducks in a row. And unfortunately, that makes the problem worse.
I think this mom, she's in for some pushback when she initiates this notion.
Yeah. Oh, no, absolutely. Even if she says to the counselor, hey, I asked this question and you could listen to this podcast episode. But when she says to the counselor, it really is not helpful for you to keep going over all these questions with my son. What we're really working on him is being able to recognize when his worry is bossing him around. And so what do we do instead? So he asks a question. So say he says, hey, have you ever heard of somebody's house burning down? Then the response the mom says, she can say, well, I'm sure you've heard of people's houses burning down. I've heard of people's houses burning down, but this is one of those worry questions, right? So your worry is just jumping. Remember last week it was asking about trees and it was asking about mosquitoes and it was asking about throw up and it was asking, this is what your worry does. So when your worry asks one of those questions, I'm just going to say, oh, Henry, please leave my son alone. You are always trying to get him to think about things and worry about things, and I'm not playing that game. The other thing, too, is that if this boy says, well, I'm just curious, one of the things we can help him do is begin to differentiate, know the difference between a question where he really wants some information and a question that really has that flair of worry to it. And that may be a little hard to ferret out at first, and that's okay. This isn't about perfection. Say he says, hey, how long do you think it took him to build the Brooklyn Bridge? That's a different kind of question than, do you think I'll get the stomach bug? The flavor of it will be pretty obvious. Yeah, but he won't like it. When she says, I'm not going to talk to your worry, he's going to get pissed off.
Yes. How long would you say it typically takes a young child of this age to grasp and hold on to the benefit of this new approach?
Well, it probably comes and goes. It waxes and wanes, but I would say a few months. particularly if it's been going on for a long time. And if asking all the questions and getting all the answers has had the endorsement of school people, had the endorsement of parents, who knows if there's grandparents or whatever. So it can take a few months. The other thing that happens is when I explain this to kids, when I say, hey, look, we're going to pull your worry out and we're going to call it Henry and we're going to talk to it and we're going to not let Henry boss you around. They like the idea at first. So what often happens is mom might say 3 or 4 times, oh, that sounds like Henry bossing you around. And then there's going to be something that is really worrying this guy. And he's going to really want the reassurance. And when she doesn't get it to him, he's going to say, I don't like doing this anymore. Or you keep saying it's my worry and it's not my worry. And you just have to answer my questions. And you're a mean mommy and I hate you and blah, blah, blah. And that's where mom has to just stay the course. They really try and get you off your game because think of it, they're just trying to get relief. They're just trying to get certainty from the parent. They're not going to give up easy. Yeah. We know this thing runs in families. And so it could be that somebody else in the family has some worry and is sort of asking these questions. Or one of the things, if I were talking to this mom, I might say, so do you give a lot of information, like before you guys go on a trip or before you go and do something? Do you really talk about exactly what's going to happen next and make sure? Because that's one of the things that can sort of keep it going too. Yeah.
Absolutely. Robin and I have 2 kids. You talk about the experience of going into the airport and allowing the child to look at the screen and guide the way to gate B or to baggage claim. That's very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's fun. And you guys travel so much. Well, think of your child went off to college, which we talked about a lot. It was funny. I was going through some of the old episodes and what the topics were. And I was like, oh, no wonder we were talking about that so much, because Robin would be like, hey, I have an idea. But that was a big deal. And she had to go off into the world. And you had traveled so much that she had those skills. You had let her figure things out. She knew how things operated. That's why it's so important that we let our kids take reasonable risk, because that's how they figure out that they can manage things or deal with the uncertainty. I mean, there must be some things in all the traveling she's been doing. There must be things that she's had to figure out, trains that were late or flights that were delayed or something.
Absolutely. She just lost her wallet.
Yeah.
And I guess this happens with some frequency. So she was pickpocketed.
Oh, gosh.
Or shanked, as our son says. And so she was shanked. And he was somewhat proud of his prediction that this would occur because she was a little too casual. And they took her money and threw the wallet onto the floor. So the store, actually, someone at the store called up her college, said, I have her wallet, and everything was in there. So it was kind of a lesson that was not overly painful to learn.
Yeah.
It was like a $20 lesson.
I like those lessons. I talk about those are lessons we learn without big consequences.
Yes.
Yeah. I got pickpocketed twice or shanked. I got shanked. Isn't that what happens in prison?
Kids today. I don't know how the 2 have gotten to mean the same thing, but...
What if you had said to me, oh gosh, Lynn, we were just talking to our daughter and she got shanked when she was, I would be like, oh my God, is she okay? Yeah.
Well, we'll take a quick break and we'll come back.
All right. My son got a Quip 360. He just went to the dentist a few weeks ago and they gave him the best report that he's had in a long time. The new Quip 360 oscillating toothbrush literally revolves around you. The American Dental Association said Quip 360 is scientifically proven to remove up to 11 times more plaque between teeth compared to a manual toothbrush and up to 2 times more whitening on day 1. If you don't absolutely love your Quip 360, return it for free within 30 days. Brush easy knowing you get a free lifetime warranty for purchasing on getquip.com and the opportunity to subscribe to Refill Heads by mail every 3 months. When you subscribe to AutoShip, you'll be enrolled in Quip Perks to earn credit back over time. Free your mouth with Quip. Discover the 25,000 5-star reviews and mouths that are already loving Quip. Just for listeners of Flusterclux, get 20% off site-wide and a free travel case and countertop stand at getquip.com getquip.com/fluster. Free your mouth today and save 20% site-wide, plus a free travel case and a countertop stand at getquip.com/fluster. getquip.com/fluster. I do enjoy a little luxury, but I don't really always want to pay top dollar. So I've discovered Quince, as have many of my friends and family members. Quince is my go-to for luxury essentials at affordable prices, like 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50, washable silk tops, organic cotton sweaters, even gold jewelry. The best part, all Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. You heard me right, 50 to 80% less. They do this by partnering directly with top factories. Quince cuts out the cost of the middleman and passes the savings on to us. And Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. I love that. You can tell just by feeling it, wearing it. Give yourself the luxury you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/fluster for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/fluster to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/fluster. So it's hard to eat healthy, isn't it? I mean, I need to have my house full of healthy snacks, healthy alternatives, and healthy meals. So that's why I love Thrive Market. It's like having a personal guide to healthier living for our families when they come to visit. Thrive Market makes it simple to find trusted, family-friendly brands without spending hours in the grocery store. From snacks and school lunches to packing healthy things when you travel, everything they offer is 100% non-GMO. And with their on-site filters, you can shop based on what matters most to your family. Are you interested in low sugar, gluten-free, organic? Are you trying to get that protein that they keep telling us we need to get? They're all just a click away. We can use those filters. We can put them into the Thrive Market app, and the Healthy Swap scanner, it scans a product you're used to buying and it instantly recommends a cleaner, healthier alternatives. I use this trying to find better crackers, trying to find better popcorn, even trying to find better cereals for kids to have in the morning before they go to school. For my family, this has been a game changer, and we have made some great swaps. If you are ready for a junk-free start to 2025, head to thrivemarket.com/fluster and get 30% off your first order, plus a free $60 gift. That's thrivemarket.com/fluster. thrivemarket.com/fluster. Okay, so now back to the show. All right, we're back.
Talk a little bit more, Lynn, if you would, about what might be things that parents can be doing unknowingly, usually with good intention, that might be aiding a little worrier to run with his worrying inclination.
Mm-hmm. So the number one thing is just giving that reassurance all the time. So as a parent, if you think your job is to make sure that your kids know everything all the time, so that you're giving them a lot of information, that you're talking at them a lot, that you're filling them in, that you are modeling for yourself that you can't step into a situation unless you know exactly what's going to happen. Like airport dad, that's my friend, she calls her husband airport dad because he has to get to the airport like 4 hours ahead of a flight. Brutal. Yeah. Just has to know exactly how everything is going to go. So if you're modeling that, then you're showing kids like it's really, really bad if things don't go as planned. Also, just pay attention to your response and your reaction. If your child asks you a question that is sort of a little disturbing, so say your child, I'm trying to think like, say your child said to you, hey, what would happen if you ate 7 marbles? And you're like, oh my God. If you act that way, then you're showing them like, oh, that's an emergency. Really pay attention to your emotional reactions. This is why I talk about being vanilla ice cream. But if you've got a worrier and they're asking a lot of questions and they're thinking about what could happen, pay attention. Are you a parent who sort of lays out the future as, we really want to know exactly what's going to happen? This does not mean that you don't plan. I say this all the time. It doesn't mean that you don't know when the flight is going to leave, that you don't plan ahead so you get to the airport on time, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But just pay attention to how you respond and react when things go a little askew, because then you're going to be modeling problem solving. Like say your daughter called and said, "Oh, I got pickpocketed." Did she have the whole story by the time she got in touch with you, or were you getting a blow by blow?
It was interesting. We think there was maybe a touch of softening the somewhat carelessness involved on her part.
Yeah.
So it didn't seem to be quite plausible that the crime could have committed with all of the preventative measures in place. To Robin's credit, she said, "Okay, well, first things first, let's talk about pausing your credit cards."
Oh, you can pause your credit card?
I mean, you could do that. You can freeze them, or if you know for certain that it's been stolen, you could cancel them outright. But yeah.
Oh, I never knew you could, but this is news to me that you could pause them, because canceling it is a pain and then you've got to go and
Yeah.
All right. So Robin said, okay, so let's pause your credit card.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And teaching her, to your point, a certain amount of calm in the face of a experience that can be disconcerting.
Right.
Like when your son was at the Patriots-Bills game and they were having a terrible time getting a car or an Uber away from the stadium at midnight in freezing cold Orchard Park, New York.
Yeah.
But I think you had modeled for him, take a breath.
Figure it out.
And he was saying, I remember that one of his friends was actually in the fully other freak out camp.
Yeah. Because they were freezing cold. It was like 10 below zero.
Ugh.
And they kept calling Ubers and nobody would come. And then finally they went and found a cop and said, like, "We don't know what to do. We can't get back to our hotel." Yeah. So problem solving. And I think that's the thing, is that anxiety isn't a good problem solver. And when we get anxious, we lose track of our prefrontal cortex. Yeah. So we want to model like, okay, so this is a situation and we need to problem solve. Yeah. So that's awesome. See, so what a parenting success that she calls you and she's like, "Oh, here's what's going on." But she wasn't totally freaking out and you guys didn't totally freak out. I think when I got pickpocketed one time in Boston, I think my wallet just got delivered back to our house in Connecticut.
Oh, really?
But I heard that if you find a wallet and you drop it in a mailbox, like a big mailbox, that the post office will send it back. One time I never found it, but the second time it showed up at our house. Yeah.
Huh, that's great.
They took the money. But by then I had already replaced everything anyway. So yeah, I haven't gotten shanked in a while though.
You've got some people on the inside who look after you.
Yeah, that's right.
We had dinner with some friends and the friend was telling the story of how his brother was overseas, got pickpocketed, shanked, including his passport.
Oh my God.
So he went to the U.S. Embassy.
Yeah.
Got the passport, and apparently there was somewhat of an organized crime ring who understood what beleaguered Americans were doing when they were going in and out or to the embassy.
Yeah.
He walks out with his fresh new passport.
Yeah.
They hold him up at gunpoint.
Oh my God.
Take his passport, and the guy says, "Well," and turns around and walks back in.
Oh, so that's probably not a story that we want to share with a little 10-year-old who worries. Yeah. Oh my God. That's crazy. All right. Well, see, many lessons learned. All right. So you did a really great job on your first podcast.
Well, thank you.
You're full of interesting stories.
I will be editing this.
Yeah. So you can take out whatever you want. Well, I think you should definitely leave in the story about getting kissed by your teacher on the cheek.
That was a high point.
Thanks for listening. And if you found this podcast helpful, please give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts. It helps other people find this information.
And if you'd like to dig deeper on any of these topics, we have specialized playlists on our Spotify profile, and the link is in the show notes. Topics like teens, depression, and OCD. Bye, Lynn.
Bye, Robin.
Are you a parent in need of a laugh and a little escape? Look no further. Parenting is a Joke is the podcast you've been waiting for. Hey, I'm Ophira Eisenberg. I'm a stand-up comic and parent. And each week I chat with one of my top comedian pals who, just like you, are juggling careers, busy lives and schedules, and raising a family. You can expect candid stories, hilarious mishaps that happen on stage and at home, and just a lot of laughs. There's no expert advice here. Well, actually, sometimes a good idea does sneak its way in, but mostly just pure, relatable fun to remind you that we're all in this parenting adventure together. New episodes of Parenting is a Joke drop every Tuesday, so tune in, get ready to laugh, unwind, and maybe even feel a little bit better about your own parenting. Because sometimes that's exactly what your therapist, pediatrician, and bartender ordered. Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform.